Kevin Blake's hands trembled slightly as he zipped up the leather duffel bag. Inside were three things: a custom-made ring with a crescent-shaped diamond, 2 orchestra-level tickets to Les Miserables, and a photograph from the day he and Liana jumped into the creek behind his grandmother's ranch, fully clothed, breathless, young, in love. 8 years of marriage. 10, if you count the years before she said yes. Kevin still remembered the way she looked that day, barefoot in the snow after a hike up Lookout Mountain, shouting, yes, to the empty sky. That was Liana, wild, impulsive, magnetic. But lately, something had gone quiet in her. The texts had turned shorter. Her laughter, rarer. And she no longer danced in the kitchen when she thought he wasn't looking. So this time, Kevin wasn't going to just send her off with a kiss and a "have fun, babe." No. This year, he was breaking their tradition. This year, he would meet her in Los Angeles. Surprise her. Remind her. And ask her to marry him again. He flew out early, touched down just after noon, and rented a 1966 Mustang, sky blue, chrome gleaming in the California sun. The kind of car you only drive when you're chasing something. Or trying to bring something back. He rehearsed it in his head while cruising down the 405. Liana, we've grown, we've struggled, but I'd choose you again. Every time. Would you say yes again? God, he hoped she would. The box with the ring rested in his shirt pocket, just over his heart. Every bump in the road pressed it into his chest like a question. When the time came, he'd give her the ring over dessert, on a balcony at Marina Breeze in Santa Monica, just as the sun slipped into the Pacific. She'd told him she and her friends were having a quiet dinner there. Stephanie and Mia. Just the girls. Wine, laughter, stories. He'd interrupt, with flowers and love and a second chance. The valet smiled as Kevin rolled up to the restaurant. The sky was golden. He combed his fingers through his hair, checked his breath, straightened the jacket that had taken him 15 minutes to choose. "Sir, will you be joining someone this evening?" the host asked with a courteous smile. Kevin smiled back. "Yes. My wife." He stepped inside, holding the bouquet behind his back. Then he stopped. She was there. Liana. Not at a table of laughing women. But leaning forward across a candlelit table, smiling softly at a man Kevin had never seen before. A tall man. Clean cut. Power in the shoulders. Ease in the grin. Confidence radiating off him like heat from asphalt. Kevin stood frozen in the doorway. He blinked once. Twice. She reached across the table. Touched the man's wrist. Slowly. Like she'd done it before. The flowers slipped a little in Kevin's hand. And that box in his pocket? It burned. Kevin didn't move. His feet felt anchored to the restaurant floor, though his chest churned like a storm was rising just beneath the ribs. People walked past him, waiters with trays of grilled halibut, couples laughing softly, someone dropping a fork and muttering, but Kevin heard none of it. All he saw was her. Liana. His Liana. Hair swept back into a low bun, like she wore it on their honeymoon in Tulum. A soft, seafoam green dress that bared her shoulders, he remembered that dress. He'd bought it for her during a weekend trip to Santa Fe. She said it made her feel like a woman in an old French film. And across from her. That man. Kevin couldn't hear them, not over the clinking of glasses and the low music playing, but he didn't need sound. The way she leaned in. The tilt of her head. The small, familiar motion of her lips when she said something she knew was clever. Kevin knew that version of her. He missed that version of her. And now, someone else was seeing her that way. Kevin turned and walked out before he even realized what he was doing. He left the restaurant like a man escaping a building on fire. Down the steps. Past the valet. Into the Mustang. He slammed the door shut and just sat there, heart pounding like a drumbeat in a vacuum. The flowers, forgotten, lay beside him on the passenger seat. No. No, no, no. He whispered it aloud, as if the repetition might undo what he'd seen. He pulled the ring box from his pocket and held it up to the dying light. The diamond caught the sun one last time before he snapped it shut and dropped it into the glove compartment like a secret. Inside the restaurant, Liana stirred her wine and said something that made the man laugh. Liana's POV. She hadn't meant for this to happen. At least, that's what she told herself. Liana traced the rim of her glass, watching the light dance along the dark red surface. Across the table, Damien was telling her about the mountain house he'd bought near Big Bear. Something about restoring the floors himself. His voice was low and smooth, like warm honey stirred into whiskey. She laughed, not at the story, but at how easily she could fall into this. There had been something effortless about Damien from the start. Not just his confidence, but the way he saw her. Not as someone's wife. Not as a woman defined by PTA meetings and polite smiles. But as someone fascinating. Someone, untamed. And now here she was. With him. Not her girlfriends. Lying, again. She hated how good it felt. Liana looked down at her phone screen, the background still showing the picture of her and Kevin on the hiking trail last fall. Their cheeks flushed, arms wrapped around each other, both squinting at the sun. She loved him. Or she had. But when had love turned into maintenance? Kevin was kind. Steady. Predictable. He brought her tea when she was sick. Kissed her temple every night. Folded the towels the way she liked without her ever asking. But somewhere along the line, she'd started to disappear inside that quiet comfort. Damien was dangerous in all the ways Kevin was safe. He didn't ask how her day was, he asked what she dreamed about. He didn't listen politely, he challenged her. He made her feel seen, not just cared for. Was it wrong to want both? A shadow passed across the window beside their table. Liana turned, barely catching the outline of a man, broad-shouldered, with dark hair, walking swiftly away from the restaurant doors. Her stomach turned. Her skin flushed hot. It couldn't be. No, it couldn't be. Damien didn't notice. He reached across the table and touched her wrist gently. The same place Kevin used to kiss on Sunday mornings when they woke up late. Liana blinked. And for a moment, she felt the floor shift beneath her. Kevin drove without knowing where he was going, the Pacific Coast Highway unfurling ahead of him like a ribbon he didn't remember tying. The ocean glistened on his left, endless and unbothered, while inside the Mustang, something in him had gone completely still. The bouquet lay untouched on the passenger seat, its bright petals beginning to wilt. The ring box was in the glove compartment now, buried like a secret he wasn't ready to destroy but couldn't bear to carry in his pocket anymore. The vision of her at that table played on a loop. Liana, his wife of 8 years, leaning forward, her lips curved in a smile Kevin hadn't seen in months, not like that. Her hand on the wrist of a man Kevin didn't know, didn't recognize, didn't want to understand. A man in a fitted navy suit, laughing softly as if the world belonged to him and Liana was part of his spoils. Kevin's jaw clenched, his knuckles pale on the steering wheel. He couldn't get the image out of his mind. The restaurant. The wine. The way she reached for the man's hand like it was something she'd done before. And that was the worst part, how familiar it all looked. Not hesitant. Not tentative. Intimate. At a red light, Kevin glanced at his phone. No messages. No missed calls. As if he didn't exist. As if she wasn't even aware, or worse, was aware and chose silence anyway. He pulled off at an overlook just north of Santa Monica, parked, and got out. The sky had darkened into bruised purple and the wind was sharp off the water. He stood there for a long time, just breathing. trying to push down the tidal wave inside him that screamed for answers, for confrontation, for anything but this aching uncertainty. Meanwhile, Liana was still sitting at that same table, though the laughter had faded, and the conversation with Damien had drifted into soft, forgettable words. She stirred her wine, barely listening, her eyes glancing toward the front entrance too often. The image of someone, Kevin, walking past the window had lodged in her brain like a shard of glass. She told herself it was nothing. A trick of light. A passing stranger. But the pit in her stomach said otherwise. She excused herself after 20 minutes, claiming a headache, and left the restaurant. Damien offered to walk her out, but she declined. Her voice was smooth, gracious, controlled. Too controlled. Her hands trembled as she slid her phone from her purse. Mia had texted. "You still on for brunch tomorrow? How's your quiet weekend?" She didn't reply. Couldn't. The truth had begun to press in on her from all sides, loud in its silence. The wine, once a comfort, now turned acidic in her mouth. She walked alone for blocks, heels clacking against the pavement, the night cold on her skin. Her dress fluttered with the wind, the same seafoam green Kevin had once said made her look like she belonged in another time. She found herself in a quieter street, and that's when she saw it. The car. A '66 Mustang, powder blue, gleaming even beneath the streetlights. Kevin's dream car. The one he always pointed out on weekend drives, saying, "That's the one. Right there. If I ever lose my mind, that's what I'll buy." She walked toward it like she was approaching an open door to the past. Placed her palm on the hood. Still warm. Recently driven. Her reflection looked back at her from the glass, hair undone, lips faded, eyes rimmed with sleepless regret. Her whole face seemed to ask a single question. "What have you done?" And somewhere not far from there, Kevin was standing at the edge of the water, the ring still in his mind even though it was locked in a box. He imagined tossing it into the waves. Watching it sink. But he didn't. Not yet. Because as much as part of him wanted to forget her, another part still hoped she would come looking. And then his phone buzzed. "Liana. Can we talk?" No explanation. No apology. Just that. Kevin read the message and stared at it until the screen dimmed. He didn't reply. Instead, he stepped into the tide, letting the water rise around his ankles, the cold cutting through the heat in his veins. Somewhere behind him, the city whispered. And ahead of him, something was breaking. The air in the hotel suite tasted like red wine and unsaid things. Liana stood just inside the door, her heels in one hand, her purse dangling off the other. The city light stretched far below, glittering across the curve of the bay like an offering. Damien was behind her, still quiet, the kind of silence that waits, not with hesitation, but with confidence. He had said nothing when she texted, "Come up." Just arrived. Like he knew she would ask eventually. The door clicked shut. Liana didn't turn. She stared out the window for a long time, trying to feel guilt. But what she felt instead was heat. A humming, buried hunger that had been rising in her for months, years, maybe. Kevin had always touched her like she was porcelain. Beautiful, yes. Precious. But never alive the way she wanted to be. Damien was different. He walked up behind her, close enough that the warmth of his chest met her spine before his hands did. But he didn't touch her yet. He waited. She could feel his breath near her ear, steady and patient. That stillness undid her more than anything. The deliberate calm of a man who wasn't asking permission, only inviting her to cross her own lines. "I shouldn't have asked you to come," she murmured. "You didn't." His voice was low, rough. "You wanted me to." Her shoulders rose slightly, then dropped, like she was finally exhaling after holding something too long. She turned to face him. There was something in his eyes that startled her. Not lust, not exactly, though that was there too, but the flicker of recognition. Like he saw through every polite lie she'd been telling the world. Like he saw the woman who sometimes woke at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering where her life had gone. His hand reached for her then, not rushed, not urgent. Just firm. It rested on the side of her neck, thumb brushing beneath her jaw. "Say stop," he said. "And I will." She didn't. Couldn't. Instead, she leaned forward and closed the last inch between them. Their mouths met not like strangers, not even like old lovers, but like something inevitable. Her fingers gripped the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer, grounding herself in the weight of someone who wasn't asking her to be anything except present. There was no performance here. No ritual. Just skin and breath and want. The kiss deepened, and the world narrowed. Her dress slipped down one shoulder, slow and deliberate, as if even the fabric knew this moment had been waiting. His fingers traced her spine, not possessive, but reverent, like he was trying to memorize her in pieces. She responded in kind, her hands skimming beneath his blazer, across the sharp lines of his back, anchoring herself in the solid truth of someone who wasn't Kevin. And for that hour, maybe more, Liana let herself forget. She forgot the vows she'd spoken barefoot in the mountains. Forgot the man who brought her tea when she was sick. Forgot the look in Kevin's eyes when he said she was his home. Because here, in this high-rise cocoon of linen sheets and drawn curtains, she felt something she hadn't let herself feel in years. Unfiltered. The way his hand slid beneath her hair. The way his voice rasped against her collarbone. The way he pulled her closer not because she was slipping away, but because he wanted more. They moved through the dark together, breathless and quiet, no words left to mask the truth. The silence between them was not empty. It was charged. Sacred in a way that felt almost cruel. Afterward, she lay curled against him, the room cooling, her body warm and aching in places she hadn't known had gone cold. Damien traced circles on her back, his other arm tucked beneath his head. Neither of them said much. And maybe that was the problem. Because now that the flame had passed, something else began to creep in, like smoke after the fire. Not regret, not quite. But something heavier. A weight she hadn't expected. Outside, the waves murmured against the shore. The world went on. And across the city, a man stood alone at the edge of the surf, his phone still unread, the ring box unopened. Liana sat up, wrapping the sheet around herself. Damien stirred but didn't ask where she was going. She walked to the window again, resting her hand on the cold glass. The sky was ink-black now, dotted with lights that looked too far away to touch. She could see her own reflection there. Her face, her bare shoulders, the knot of something tightening in her chest. A knock. Inside her mind. Inside her ribs. What have I done? What would Kevin say, if he had seen her? But deep down, part of her already knew. He had seen her. And tomorrow. Nothing would be the same. The waves reached him first in the ankles, then the knees, cold as truth and just as unforgiving. Kevin stepped further into the Pacific without thinking, each motion slow, mechanical, like the tide had a hold on him and was pulling, coaxing. The sand shifted beneath his feet, soft at first, then treacherous. He didn't notice. Not the chill crawling up his thighs, not the wind slicing across his cheeks, not even the weight of his jeans dragging him down with every step. He walked like a man chasing something beneath the surface. Above him, the sky had turned completely black, stars barely visible behind the gauze of city haze. The Santa Monica Pier blinked behind him in reds and blues, distant and irrelevant. That place, the restaurant, the ring, the illusion of a marriage still breathing, was miles behind him now, even if it was only a few blocks up the beach. The water hit his waist, then his chest. His phone had buzzed once, Liana's message, but it didn't matter now. It was soaked, dead weight in his pocket, same as the wallet, the keys, the life he'd spent 8 years building with a woman who had looked him in the eyes for years and still learned how to lie. He kept walking. The tide came to meet him like a vow, pulling tighter, deeper, until the water reached the base of his neck. And that's when something in him finally cracked. He stopped. Stood there, trembling, waves pushing against his chest like they were testing him. The cold was total now. It pierced his skin, clawed into his ribs, tightened around his lungs. But the numbness wasn't physical. It was older than that. It was the silence between two people who used to be one thing and had slowly, cruelly become two strangers who shared a bed. Kevin tilted his head back and stared up at the sky. No sound. No voice. Not even tears. Just the vast stretch of night above him, and the dark, churning sea below. He thought about letting go. Not in the dramatic, irreversible sense. Not death. No. But something quieter. Disappearance. To just float away, untethered, erased from this story he didn't write but somehow became the tragic hero of. He took one more step forward. And the water hit his chin. That's when he saw her face. Not Liana. Not now, not in that hotel room. But then. Snow falling on Lookout Mountain. Her breath fogging the air. That laugh, bright, ridiculous, echoing through the trees as she caught snowflakes on her tongue and said, "This is it. This is the kind of moment people spend their whole lives chasing." That memory hit him harder than the waves. Because it hadn't been fake. Not all of it. Somewhere in that long chain of moments, there had been something real. Something worth everything. And now it was gone. Torn. Spoiled. Kevin stood motionless as another wave slammed into his chest. And then. He turned. Feet heavy, he began moving back. Step by step. Against the tide. It wasn't easy. The ocean wanted him. It always wants what's breaking. His legs ached with the effort. The salt stung his eyes. His heart, now pounding like war drums in his chest, roared loud enough to drown out the sea. He stumbled once, the current knocking him sideways, but caught himself, hands slicing through the water. He didn't stop. Back toward the shore. Back toward something painful. Unfinished. Ugly. But real. By the time he collapsed onto the wet sand, the waves lapping at his back like ghosts refusing to let go, Kevin was gasping. His shirt clung to him like a second skin, soaked through. His jeans were heavy, dragging him down with every breath. The wind cut him in half. But he was alive. And the truth of it hit him like another wave. He had gone too far. Not just into the water. But in loving someone who didn't know how to stay. He lay there for a long time. Face to the sand. Breath shallow. And when he finally rolled over and looked up at the stars, they seemed further away than they ever had. But the message in that distance was clear. He couldn't fix this. Not with a ring. Not with flowers. Not even with the truth. He could only face it. Kevin sat up slowly, shaking from cold and adrenaline and grief. He looked back at the water. The tide was still rising. The sea would keep coming, as it always did. But so would he. Not to chase her. Not anymore. But to choose himself. He stood. His steps toward the boardwalk were uneven, sand dragging at his heels. The city was quiet in the distance. The hotel suite would still be glowing somewhere high above the street. Her hair would still be damp. Her body still warm from someone else's hands. But tomorrow? Tomorrow would be different. He would not go back into the water. The knock came just after 9. Not loud. Not urgent. Just, steady. As if the person behind it wasn't asking to be let in, but simply informing the world that they had arrived. Liana froze. She was barefoot, hair still damp from the shower, wrapped in one of those hotel robes she always pretended not to like but secretly loved, the ones that smelled like bleach and silence. Damien had left 2 hours ago. No long goodbye, no promises. Just a kiss to her temple and a low, murmured "take care of yourself," that settled into her bones like ash. She hadn't expected anyone. Certainly not him. But somehow, deep down, she knew. The knock came again. Liana walked to the door with slow, deliberate steps, like her legs were moving through something heavier than air. She didn't look through the peephole. Didn't need to. She opened it. And there he stood. Kevin. Socks soaked through. Shirt wrinkled and still damp around the collar. His hair wind-tousled, jaw tense, eyes, God, his eyes, so tired they looked bruised. But underneath all that, he was steady. Alive. Present. And utterly unreadable. Liana's mouth opened, but no words came out. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Kevin took one step inside. She stepped back to let him pass. The door closed behind him with a soft finality that felt like a gunshot. The room smelled faintly of her perfume and something else she couldn't name. Regret, maybe. Or memory. He looked around, eyes brushing the bed, the table by the window, the half-empty wine glass on the nightstand. She watched him see everything. Not just the room, but her. The wet hair. The robe. The red indentation on her ankle from where a heel had been kicked off too fast. He didn't ask. Didn't need to. He knew. "I saw you," he said quietly. She swallowed. "I know. In the restaurant. You touched his hand." She nodded once, eyes stinging. He walked to the window, his back to her now, arms crossed. The city stretched out before him, so big, so busy, so indifferent to the small apocalypse happening in this room. "I came to surprise you," he said. "I brought flowers. Tickets to that show in Hollywood you always said you wanted to see. I rented the car. The ring's in the glove box." He gave a soft, hollow laugh. "I even practiced the speech." Liana closed her eyes, and for the first time, felt the weight of all of it settle on her chest. "I was going to ask you to marry me again," he said. Same man, same woman. New promise. She turned away, biting her lip until it hurt. She didn't deserve this version of him, the version still trying, even now. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I swear to you, Kevin, I didn't." His voice didn't rise. "But you let it happen." She said nothing. The silence that followed was the thickest yet. And in it, everything lived. Their wedding vows. Their inside jokes. The ultrasound photo they kept in a drawer. The echo of late-night arguments and half-hearted apologies. The memory of him fixing the sink while she painted the nursery. The sound of her saying, "I'm just going to LA for the weekend, babe. Just the girls." And now this. Kevin turned around, his eyes searching hers. Was it worth it? She opened her mouth. Closed it again. What answer could possibly fit? He stepped closer. Not with fury. With something worse, resolve. "You're not a villain," he said. "I know that. You're restless. You wanted to feel something you thought you'd lost. I get it." Her throat tightened. "But I need you to know something, Liana." His voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. "That man you met 8 years ago. He's still in here. I still remember the exact way you looked when you came down the steps in your wedding dress. I still remember the smell of the first dinner we burned together. I still remember the sound you made when I asked you to move in, like someone had dared to give you the world." A tear slid down her cheek. "But you," he shook his head. "You remembered something else. Something I wasn't part of." He didn't cry. He didn't plead. He just looked at her like he had finally let go of the rope he'd been clinging to. I went into the ocean tonight, he said. Up to my neck. I didn't even know why. I just walked. And when I stopped, I realized I wasn't drowning. She took a breath, but it caught halfway up her ribs. I don't know what you're going to do after this, Kevin continued. But me? I'm going to drive back to that motel off the one. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to wake up. And then I'm going to go home. I don't know if that home will include you anymore. I don't know if it should. Liana stepped forward, shaking now. Kevin, please. He held up a hand. No more promises tonight. Just, think. Think hard. He walked past her, toward the door. And she didn't stop him. Because in that moment, she understood something too. Kevin had stopped trying to save what was sinking. And now, for the first time in years, she would have to decide whether to swim alone, or chase the man already halfway back to shore. The door opened. Closed. And the room was silent. The sun rose quietly over Los Angeles, brushing the buildings in gold like nothing had happened the night before. As if love hadn't shattered inside a hotel room, as if a man hadn't stood neck deep in the ocean trying to decide whether to stay or vanish. The city never paused for heartbreak. It simply carried it, unnoticed, beneath the noise. Kevin sat on the edge of a motel bed off Highway 1, staring at the ring in his hand. The box was open, the diamond catching the light through the slatted blinds. It looked absurd now, like some antique from another life, his life, the one where he believed effort could fix everything. He turned it over in his palm slowly, not ready to throw it away, not ready to keep it. The room around him was still. The cheap floral bedspread, the flickering television on mute, the coffee cup going cold on the windowsill, it all felt like a waiting room for something no one wanted to name. There had been no second message from Liana. No apology. No call. Just the memory of her eyes when he left, wide with something between guilt and fear. Or maybe that wasn't fear. Maybe it was emptiness. He couldn't tell anymore. He didn't want to try. He pulled on his hoodie, slid the ring back into the box, and left. Outside, the morning was warm and bright in the cruel way only morning after betrayal can be. The Mustang sat quietly in the lot, the soft rumble of the engine humming like it, too, knew this drive would be different. Kevin didn't look back at the motel. He drove north, toward Malibu, the highway stretching endlessly before him. There was no plan. Just motion. The act of going forward without knowing where that led. Halfway through the canyon road, he pulled over at a scenic overlook, the cliffs wide and raw above the sea. And he cried. Not the loud, cinematic kind. Just silent, exhausted tears that came without permission. His hands shook. His throat closed. But he didn't fight it. Not this time. There was no one left to be strong for. The love was still there, that was the unbearable part. He didn't hate her. He could hate what she'd done, the lies, the silence, the cowardice of not admitting she'd been slipping away for years. But hate her? No. She was still the girl who danced barefoot on wet pavement. Still the woman who read poetry under her breath while brushing her teeth. The mother who cried when the ultrasound tech said, "It's a boy," even though they'd said they didn't care. But she was also someone else now. Someone who had chosen a quiet betrayal over a difficult truth. And maybe Kevin had chosen that too, by not asking harder questions, by letting their marriage turn into something polite and practical. Love didn't disappear in an instant. It eroded. And they had both stood there, watching the shoreline recede, pretending not to notice. He pulled the ring out one last time. No speech. No tears left to soak it. He placed it gently on the edge of the overlook, on a flat stone facing the sea. Not as a symbol. Not as an offering. Just an ending. Then he got back in the car. Back in the hotel room, Liana stood barefoot on the carpet, the robe tied too tight, the silence unbearable. The bed was still unmade. Damien was gone. No trace of him now, no scent, no shirt left behind. And that, somehow, felt worse. He hadn't even tried to stay. She opened the curtains, watched the city blink awake, people walking dogs, grabbing coffee, slipping into cars. What a stupid thing love was. Fragile, heavy, blinding. She'd expected Kevin to scream. To slam the door. She'd even braced herself for violence, not because he was that kind of man, but because it might have been easier than the look he gave her. The look that said, "I still love you, and I'm walking away anyway." That look undid her more than anything. She sank into the corner chair, clutching her knees to her chest, and began to weep, not because she'd been caught. Not because the thrill was gone. But because in chasing some forgotten version of herself, she had let go of the only person who ever waited for her to return. Hours passed. She called no one. Ate nothing. Moved only to wash the makeup off her face and stare at the woman in the mirror. She looked older than yesterday. Not in years, something deeper. The kind of aging that happens when you betray the part of yourself that used to believe in forever. By the time she checked out of the hotel, the ring on Kevin's finger was already gone. They didn't speak for 3 days. Not until she stood on the porch of their Denver home, suitcase in hand, unsure if her key would still fit the lock. Kevin answered the door before she could try. He didn't smile. Didn't invite her in. He just said quietly, "You're not the same woman I married. And I'm not the same man you left behind." She nodded. "I know." He paused. "But I still want to know if there's something left to save." And just like that, they stood there, two people not in love, not yet. But maybe still willing to try. The second proposal never happened. But the silence between them. It had changed. Not with a vow. With a choice.